welcome to the Six Figure Developer Podcast, the podcast where we talk about new and exciting technologies, professional development, clean code, career advancement, and more. I'm John Calloway.
I'm Clayton Hunt.
And I'm John Ash.
With us today is Sarah Withy. Sarah is a polyglot software engineer, public speaker, teacher, and mentor, and hardware and robot tinkerer located in Pittsburgh, PA. She has a passion for technology and has ever since she wrote her first computer programs in elementary school. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, good to be here.
So, Sarah, to get us started, would you tell us how you got started in this industry?
Yeah. So when I was little, my parents had a Commodore 64, and to play games, my dad was like, okay, put the disc in, turn the knob to keep the disc in there and type in this command to load a game. And, I would always do that, but I always kind of wondered what the command meant and all the extra little symbols you had on to the end. I remember finding the manual one day, and I just started looking through it. I'm like, wow, there's so many things you can type in here. That's really cool. And so I started typing in those things, and the computer always did those things. I'm like, this is awesome. And wait, you can build bigger things and bigger things and bigger things. So I was writing like stupid little programs, like move smiley faces around on screen or whatever. But, it really kind of spawned this like awesome thing where I realized I can write these programs to do little things for me. And I guess I got lucky in that I kind of wanted to keep learning it in middle school and high school and into college. And so I managed to be one of the few people I think I've ever met to get a career actually in the thing that they've always wanted to do. So I feel a bit lucky in that sense.
Yeah. It's definitely awesome. What are you working on these days?
I guess the simple answer would be I'm job hunting because I'm unemployed at the moment. I just finished revamping my whole website. So it used to be 2 WordPress sites, and it's just become kind of unwieldy and a mess, and they're old looking. So I just Friday night published a new version. It's written in Jekyll. It's a static site hosted on Netlify, yeah. And I kind of like it. It feels more modern and refreshed and easier to kind of see all the important things. So feeling good about that. And I guess I'm also helping run a conference in Pittsburgh called Abstractions. And it's about a 2,000 person multidiscipline software conference.
Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So it's going to be our second abstractions conference, but the organization Code and Supply has been doing conferences for a few years now. And it's cross-discipline, so it's not just software developers, but also managers and DevOps, design people, kind of the whole width of different positions you can have in the software development world. And so we have a lot of talks specifically focused on all of those different areas, and even some that kind of cross over. So we have, a lot of good content in that sense, but we also have a lot of fun things we're kind of doing on the sides as well. So we have like therapy dogs, and probably going to have yoga for developers is what we called it last time. And a few other different things like that. So it should be good, pretty fun. And maybe not your typical average software conference.
And what were the dates for that?
It'll be August 21st through 23rd, 2019.
Very nice.
So about 2 months away from this recording.
And you do a fair amount of speaking yourself as well. Is that correct?
Yeah. I've spoken for the past, 4 years. I've spoken within the U.S., and then this year I got to speak internationally for the first time. So that's been kind of interesting and awesome and different. But I think I totaled it up when I was making the new website, and I think I've given like 60 different presentations over 5 years. So I've done a few things over the years.
Nice. Where did you speak internationally?
I was speaking in London at the end of January, and then I just got back from Oslo like a week ago.
Okay. Were those the NDCs, or were they something else?
Yeah, NDC London and NDC Oslo.
I'd love to go to an NDC someday.
They're pretty cool. I think Minnesota's coming up soon. If you're not quite vested in jumping over the pond yet. Yeah.
I don't know. It's the Norwegian Developer Conference. It seems like it'd make more sense to go to the one in Norway.
Norway. Yeah. You would think, but
I almost said Norwegia.
Norwegia. Yeah, it's like Canadians are from Canada, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've been speaking about an artificial pancreas recently. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about what an artificial pancreas and what got you interested in that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a type 1 diabetic, and I found, for the most part, when they diagnosed me in 2012, I kind of kept it quiet. I usually kept it quiet because I think there's a stigma behind it. Like, oh, I don't take care of myself. I like cookies too much. My body is terrible and doing bad things and, whatever. But really, this is the type of diabetes that comes when your body just quits making insulin. And, it's like nothing I could do to stop it. It just sort of happened. And all the healthcare in the world can't bring it back either. So I'm just kind of stuck with this for a while. And a bunch of people in the software community have been kind of hacking away at assorted solutions to try and make this easier over the years. But a couple years ago, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, a woman named Dana Lewis kind of ended up coming up with an algorithm to sort of but make corrections to like blood sugar and insulin levels. So there's a certain amount you have to take for all the food you eat. And, if you get that wrong, then either your blood sugar is going to go high, which can have like long-term health effects, or your blood sugar can go low, which has like more immediate health effects, usually where you start shaking and get sweaty and your body starts freaking out because it doesn't think it has the energy to run off of. So, not great things to really have. But her algorithm can determine can spot like trends in what's going on with your body, what's going on with your blood sugar levels, and can make corrections to that. And found out, some people had found out a way to reverse engineer a couple insulin pumps. And so you can send them signals to say, give me a little more insulin or a little less insulin, to kind of correct for that. And over time, they've sort of built up all these little scripts that have kind of formed together into this device that they sort of jokingly call an artificial pancreas. So I usually refer to that because that's like the simplest explanation for it. Even though I guess we might call it like a Linux-based IoT open hybrid looping system to sound really fancy. But it's basically like a small IoT computer. There's Raspberry Pi Zero ones, and then an Intel Edison-based one. And there's a couple other different ones. Those are the ones I run, though. But so it tethers off my phone, so it gets all my blood sugar values from the internet. So my phone publishes to the cloud, and then pulls them down, kind of see what's going on, both like right now within the 15 minutes, as well as like over the course of a day. It tries to make those adjustments, and then tells my insulin pump to do what it needs to. And because of this, actually, I've seen a lot better values over time. In fact, my doctor even started questioning me about it. She's like, you have really good test results. Like, what are you doing different? I'm like, well,
just eat healthy
there's this thing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. What are the technologies involved? So you mentioned, excuse me. So you mentioned it's running off a Raspberry Pi and Linux based, and what all's involved to make that work for you?
Yeah. So there's two main kind of classifications of these, at least in the open source variety. There's OpenAPS, which is the one I run, the Open Artificial Pancreas System. And then there's Loop, which is based off a bunch of sets called LoopKit, which is mostly an iOS-based one that works with different insulin pumps. So it's partly dependent on what phone you have, partly dependent on what pumps you have. That depends on which one you can run. But with OpenAPS, at least, it's a small computer, like we said. So you can have a Raspberry Pi Zero with what's called an Explorer board on it, or an Intel Edison, which is kind of a system on chip that you also get a different type of Explorer board. And both of these boards have a 900 megahertz transmitter on it. So what that transmitter does is can talk to the insulin pump, which it doesn't have Bluetooth, it doesn't have internet. So the only way to talk to it is over that 900 megahertz frequency. So the device connects to my phone over Wi-Fi. And then all those values are published in a software called Night Scout, which I have running in Heroku, but you can run in Azure as well, even just on the free instances that they offer. So it pulls down those values, does all the data crunching, runs things through the algorithms, and then it gets, a determination of whether, like, the amount of insulin it needs to dose based on, like, the carb ratios and everything that go on with your body, and then sends the signal over to the pump, and the pump can respond. And this happens every 5 minutes. So even if, I eat a cookie now and my blood sugar starts spiking in about 15 minutes, it can pick that up and make adjustments to it.
Does the excuse me, does the Pi or the Edison, are those wearable? Like, do you have to have them on you, or are they docked somewhere?
Yeah, good question. So I have mine in a cute little pouch. There's a company called Tally Gear that makes these cute little adorable pouches to keep insulin things in. And it has a carabiner, so I usually clip it on like my jeans belt, or if I wear a belt with the dress, I can clip it on there, or like on my bag or something. So I usually have it with me. It's not actually physically attached to my body because it bridges the gap between the phone and the pump in the way that you can't really do on its own. So I just have to have it somewhere near me. Without an antenna, I think I had to have it within like 5 feet. I added an antenna to it, so it's actually in the other room right now. So it's like doing all its work through the walls to control the stuff. So I can pretty much like wander the whole house, and I don't have to have it with me. But if I leave, obviously I need to take it with me.
If you forgot it, or if the power went out on it, do you get alerts? Does that negatively affect the performance of the pump, or is the pump just go back to doing whatever it normally does?
Yeah, that's a good question. It kind of goes back to your default settings. So your pump knows kind of your all-day levels that you need, and then you give it extra for the food you eat. So if you don't have that little device with you, you just go back to manual mode. So I would just have to tell the pump, give me this much insulin for the food I ate. It does occasionally die. So if, like, I forget to turn on tethering on my phone, so it's constantly looking for a Wi-Fi signal, it'll die a little faster. So sometimes I have to charge it in the middle of the day. There's times like when I flew to Oslo, for instance, I don't have internet on the plane. And so, it can't download those values and do the math. There's an offline mode, but I don't feel like setting it up. It's a bunch of work. But yeah, so it's kind of defaults back to, sort of manual mode if I don't have it.
So manually, you would have to be the one twisting the knobs or controlling that just based on some like default settings, and then you knowing what you've eaten and not, and sort of how you're feeling. Is that?
Yeah. So I have an app on my phone, and it over Bluetooth can talk to my glucose sensor. So I have a thing on my arm. Every 5 minutes, it sends what my blood sugar value is. And so right now I can see it's 94 in the app. And so I can see, there's a bunch of dots on my app that shows kind of what's going on. So I can kind of see, if it's rising, then I probably need to add some extra to it. And there's a little calculator on here that helps too. But, if I eat a cheeseburger, and then I can probably guess it's like 30 grams of carbs. I know my ratio. So divide the 30 by the ratio, and I get the number of units I need to take, and I just take it.
Yeah,
sort of just keep an eye on things to make sure nothing goes haywire.
That's pretty cool though that we're able to use that technology to kind of help alleviate that and make your test results even better. Where did you find this? Or you probably just are digging into, this definitely is in your wheelhouse, but what took you down that path?
Yeah. I think I'd heard about it somewhere from a news article. It was probably like 2 years ago, but I think it was still not in a good solid state. There's still a lot of people testing it and, playing with things, and it wasn't really too solid. It was about a year and a half ago, I think, that I heard about it again. And a friend of mine I knew from Twitter and Slack said she'd heard about this. She wants to build it, but she didn't know anything about hardware things. And I'm like, well, maybe we could talk it through and work on it together. And then I ended up moving to the same city as her, just kind of coincidentally. And so we met in real life, and we both built our own pancreases. And she's been running hers a little bit longer than I have, but so we've both been also kind of there for each other, making sure things work, and asking each other questions about, does this look normal? Is this weird? Etc.
So how much code is involved in getting something like this to work?
I don't know. I haven't looked at the repo in a while. I think last I looked, there's something like 30 different scripts that are involved. And it's mostly like just a Linux terminal, and there's a bunch of cron jobs running in the background. So every 5 minutes, it goes through another loop where it says like, hey, pump, what's going on? Get those values, figure things out. Once a day at 4 a.m, it runs AutoTune, which is where it goes back over the whole course of the day, sees if anything weird has happened where it wasn't expecting. So like it went up when it shouldn't have, or went down when it shouldn't have, and tries to correct those carb ratios and other amounts that I use throughout the course of the day. So different scripts like that. I think there's like 15 cron job instances or something that kind of all magically work in the background. And I added a few myself to say, if it detects the Wi-Fi network when I'm at home, switch over to that so it doesn't keep using my phone. If it doesn't find it's on there anymore, and then keep looking for one of its known networks to switch to. So like if I'm at the co-working space, it knows to use that one. If I'm on the road, it knows to use the phone tethered one, etc. So
Cool.
A few different things.
So being the tinkerer that you are you looking to make improvements? Are you looking to maybe do something fancy with machine learning, or maybe looking to get your hands on the new Raspberry Pi 4 that was recently announced?
Yeah, I just saw that. I thought it'd be really cool to be able to contribute back. So I subscribed to all the GitHub repos for the 5 projects that are involved in this, and was overwhelmed at notifications. Like, these are not stale projects by any means whatsoever. And kind of almost immediately felt like I didn't need to be there. I started looking at some of the issues like, well, I guess I could work at these. But I had this idea one day, what might make sense is for the non-technical people to have something that might assist them in installing this on their own device. Because currently there's a whole bunch of documentation that says, okay, get the device, flash Linux on it. Okay, make sure you have, apt install, Git, and a bunch of other things, and clone these repos and run this install script, and it's gonna do a bunch of npm refreshes and blah blah blah. And people who aren't in the software industry don't have a clue what any of this stuff is, and if anything messes up along the way, they're stuck. Because I know when I first installed it, there were a couple pieces that weren't working right. And I didn't know if that was me, if that was an install script that messed up, or if it was my particular setup. But I know how to get myself out of those situations. And, eventually got a device that worked. I know non-technical people don't. So I started thinking through, how could I build an app that would, if you just plugged it in, it could detect whether an Edison or a Raspberry Pi, could flash the SD card right off the bat, maybe download those repos on its own, in the UI, ask you a few questions like, what's the serial number of your pump and blah, blah, blah. And then flash that configuration file on there, reboot the device, and then, maybe say the user can take it on their own from there. So kind of a way to automate the ugliest parts of this install process that non-technical people can't use. So I've been thinking through how to do that in a way that would be easiest, especially in terms of cross-platform compatibility. So how do I make a thing that flashes on Windows and Mac to multiple types of devices and so on? So I've been kind of thinking that through, and I'm hoping to get started maybe on that Twitch stream. So
yeah, and speaking of your Twitch stream, is it
I've had the Twitch account for, I don't know, a couple years and never really used it that much for a while. But I know Suze Hilton, she's done live coding for a while. And I've seen some of her blog posts on, it's been a year in, here's the things I've learned, here's why I do it. And, I was kind of inspired by that she, doesn't just do it for, I don't know what reasons, but, she gets something out of it herself. And, people that watch also get something out of it. So it's not just a one directional kind of thing, which I really liked. And, just through conference speaking, through talking to people on Twitter, through, real life interactions, I've done tons and tons of workshops. I kind of thought it might be interesting both to be able to offer, like coding practices. Maybe people can see what it's like for a woman in tech to code things, but also had some people say, like, I really like how you approach things. I like that you are really good at explaining technical things in non-technical ways. I really like, I would just be interested to see in how you would approach certain types of problems and things like that. So it sort of made me wonder, like, well, okay, I think people would be bored out of their minds to watch me do this, but maybe it might be kind of interesting. So I tested the water with like 2 different streams. Once I sort of hacked out a keyboard and tried to add LEDs to it and make it blink for like if I got a new tweet or something. And I think that's faded off the stream at this point. But and then another one I did sort of what the install process would look like for the artificial pancreas. Did that with my friend Tracy that lives in town. And that was kind of interesting, and even had a couple of people say they looked at that and they were, it was cool and I should do more things. So I just couldn't really, I guess, find a schedule to devote myself to until kind of more recently. I said, like, maybe now's the time to try and start doing that. So
what other types of things are you thinking about streaming? I notice you've got some interest in functional programming. Is that something that we can look forward to on your Twitch channel?
Yeah, possibly. The functional programming talk I've given at conferences sort of came from while I was in college. I took a programming languages course. We built an entire project in Haskell. And then I remember leaving the class and years down the road going, like, I still don't know what functional programming is. What is it? And am I using it now? I don't know. Like, I know what functions are, but what makes this its own magical thing? And so that's kind of where that talk came from. Just as sort of like, it's a big buzzword and I don't even know if people know exactly when or why they're using it. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely open to kind of new things. I'm open to, trying out new technologies myself and just sort of streaming along, or just saying, like, I know how to do something, let's tackle a project in it and see where it goes from there. I do have a couple other project ideas that are sort of sitting on the sidelines that could be dug out and done too. And I know a lot of people have said they have an interest in hardware things, since I've done robots and Raspberry Pis and stuff over the years. So there might be some of that in the near future too.
Yeah, I think
Robots are
everybody
always
has.
fun.
Yeah, everybody has at least one Raspberry Pi sitting on a shelf collecting dust, right?
Yeah, and that's sort of the inspiration behind my Raspberry Pi talk I gave, is that, I knew so many people like, yeah, Raspberry Pis are so cool. And I'm like, what are you doing with it? Like, well, it's in a junk drawer. I'm just like, certainly we can do something with this. And so I thought about all the projects I had done in college and the robotics team I was on, and just realized, like, well, they just teach people how to build projects with this, and maybe tie it into their garage door openers. They can text it to open, or build it into the coffee machines that could automatically fill up with water and turn itself on at 8 a.m. or whatever. And so I tried going about that route, and who knows what I could build on a Twitch stream too.
Yeah, given your all of the hardware stuff that you're tinkering with, and but you know, looking at your site, you just have a, a, a lot of exposure to many different stacks. What really do you enjoy? What sort of is your favorite? Would you say?
Oh gosh.
They kind of
Um,
does that change over time, and it depends on how you're feeling?
that's a good question. And it's really weird because I feel like sometimes the only person on the planet that doesn't have a favorite language, doesn't have a favorite stack or framework or whatever, favorite cloud platform. Uh, it's just kind of over time. I learned, when I was a kid, I learned BASIC on the Commodore. My first college class was in C++. I learned Java in the next one. I learned C# sort of by accident in a project. I did Haskell once. I, learned PHP on the side, so I had a web language, and it just kind of grew over time to do all these different things and all these different stacks. The first internship I had was in C++, and it was in a business intelligence thing. The next internship I had was in C# and JavaScript, implementing things I had never seen before. It's been sort of fascinating how I've sort of evolved over the time. And I don't know that I still have a favorite. I really like learning different things. I like knowing if I have a problem to solve, I can pick the thing that solves the problem. I don't think there's a better web framework. I think, one's geared more towards simplicity, one's geared more towards feature benefits and different things like that. I definitely think there's a time for, I know this language, I should probably implement it, versus like, I know I need to do this. XYZ language might be better in it, and I don't know it yet.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to approach those things.
And I kind of tried to sort of absorb that branding. Like, I call myself a polyglot software engineer because I like the idea that you can sit down, give me something, and I'm probably running with it in a couple days, even if I don't know it. Just because I've seen so many different other things, and like I know Python and Ruby wasn't that hard to learn when a project was thrown on me. like this needs security fault things fixed in it, and you're the only one available right now. Can you fix it? Like, sure.
So I can really relate to that. I feel like one thing for me, I like to think of it like I can see all of the similarities. I'm good at finding the patterns where it's like, oh, this is the same as that, and this is the same as that, and that lets me pick up a lot of different things very quickly and jump between various nuances. But one of the things that eludes me, maybe not eludes is the right word, but I see other people sort of becoming a lot more nuanced with, is the actual like semantics and differentiation between where I'll find it difficult to differentiate or see differences between different stacks or differences between technologies or even sometimes even patterns, because for me, I just see all the similarities, and it's sort of blinding to really be nuanced and picky about what differences. What would you experience that the same, or do you think that you find yourself being able to sort of pick out the differences just as easily as you can pick out the similarities? Does that make sense? It's kind of
I think so.
Okay.
It has been hard sometimes. There's a bit of context switching, I guess, between, when I jump from one language to another. It's not necessarily that I've forgotten, but that I have to kind of remember certain nuances to things, like an array of integers in C#, the brackets come, versus like Java, like the brackets come on the int versus the brackets go on the variable name. And it's just like I know there's a difference. I just, there's a little bit of context switching to remembering little things like that. For the most part, I think it's been fairly easy to adapt to language nuances, I guess, in that, you implement some things differently in certain types of languages. Sometimes it doesn't work. I was working on something in Python the other day, and somebody was like, "That's not quite how I would have done it." And I'm like, "Well, okay, but it still works, I guess." And it is a little bit harder not being like a perfect expert in something versus like having a good general knowledge of a lot of different things. But I also think there's places in the development world for both people. You really want those people that have only touched JavaScript and that's the only thing they've ever seen their whole lives versus some people that have said, like, I've built desktop applications and web applications and mobile applications, and I have insights from all of those to bring to our whatever we're working on.
Awesome. Thank you. One of the things we ask everyone is if they would just sort of give some specific advice to people who are just getting started. Is there something that some words of wisdom that you would give out to those individuals?
Like getting started programming.
Yeah, just getting started in the industry or trying to like level up themselves.
Yeah. I guess I would say, I don't know what I would say. I feel like I had a good thing on the last podcast I was on, and now I can't remember. It's going to look great for the video later.
Well, we could also talk about maybe resources and maybe come back to that, or for people that are trying to get involved in the artificial pancreas, if there's any resources that you can point people to.
Yeah. I guess advice might be maybe find some local communities to get in touch with. And those could be either meetups or maybe Slack groups or something. Because I know I've been a part of some that have been really generous to beginners that, if they have questions, they can come in and ask those, or if they're working on a project, they can bring in the project and get some sort of direct mentoring. So I might suggest if you can be able to find something like that so you can get, support and not just, email your boss or something like that. That may not always have the most amount of time. I guess another thing I might say is if you're entering the industry, try and insist on one-on-ones, especially if your boss doesn't do those, or, just regular check-ins with both your manager to make sure, you're doing what they expect. They're, getting what you expect. I think that should be a two-way relationship, not just, you get some more work done. It should be very much a, how are you doing as a person and an employee, So maybe insist on those as well and just keep learning. Don't say I know what I'm doing and then just stop. Like I think that's what keeps me going as a polyglot. It's just this fascination of like, oh, there's another thing in tech I can learn. And I know I can't learn it all, but I think that fascination just keeps me like continually interested in things, even when I do get a little bored in something.
How about any social media, like Twitter, your LinkedIn, if people are interested in following you, what accounts can you plug there?
Yeah. I'm on Geeky Girl Sarah on pretty much everything. So Twitter, Facebook, website, geekygirlsarah.com, everything. On LinkedIn, I go for the slightly more professional Sarah Withy. But you can pretty much find me everywhere on Geeky Girl Sarah. So, and I definitely, like I said, sort of see it as a two-way thing. So I don't just post only. I try to engage in conversations on those. I try to be social on social media. Who would have thought? So, definitely reach out. I would love to start conversations and, kind of share my thoughts, hear what you have to say as well.
Awesome. And I know you mentioned Abstractions, which the second conference, Abstractions. Do you have any speaking engagements that you are going to be giving lined up here that you'd like to plug?
Yeah, so I am not speaking at Abstractions. I will be an organizer running around with their head cut off, metaphorically, of course, not realistically. Uh, and I do have a couple other places I'm speaking. That conference is coming up at the beginning of August. I'll be giving a workshop there and talking about the pancreas. Strange Loop, I'll be talking about the pancreas in mid-September. And then Agile plus DevOps East is in Orlando, and I'll be speaking about the pancreas there as well. And then there's a couple others I'm not supposed to admit yet, so I'm still in the works. But yeah, I'll be around.
Very cool.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate you coming on the show. Wish you luck at all the upcoming speaking engagements. And of course, good luck with the Abstractions Conference.
Thank you very much. I've been glad to be here.
That was Sarah Withy. Sarah is a polyglot software engineer, public speaker, teacher and mentor, and hardware and robot tinkerer located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She has a passion for technology and has ever since she wrote her first computer programs in elementary school.
If you like this episode, please like, rate, and review on iTunes.
Find show notes, blog posts, and more at sixfiguredev.com.
And be sure to follow us on Twitter at SixFigureDev.
This has been another episode of the Six Figure Developer Podcast, helping others reach their potential. I am John Calloway.
I'm Clayton Hunt.
And I'm John Ash.